I wanted to start off this devotional with a verse that I remember hearing back when I was pretty young the first time. And in fact, there was a picture that my grandmother had in her house that depicted this verse. The verse comes from the book of Revelations, chapter 3, verse 20. It says this: "Listen, I stand at the door knocking. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come into you and eat with you, and you with me." You know, it's this great verse, this idea that, Jesus is standing at the door and he's knocking at the door and wants to come into our house and wants to dine with us and be with us. But in practical speaking, we know, and maybe you've had this experience too, that we know if we have someone just kind of popping over to our house at the last minute, that's not always a good thing, is it? I mean, when someone gives us a call and they say, "Hey, I'm gonna pop on over. I just need to stop by for a bit." First thing we probably do is we start straightening up the house, right? Try making sure that it looks respectable. I know that happens at our house all the time if we hear that someone's coming over. But here's the really odd thing. If it was a family member, sometimes it's coming over, or like a really close friend who's coming over, you just don't worry about it, do you? I mean, they know you, they love you, they care about you, and so if your house is a little bit messy, it's a little bit messy. What difference does it make, right? And it's kind of interesting because the closer you are to somebody, the more willing you are just to open the door up. All right, now be honest. What would happen if Jesus literally knocked at your door to come in? Would you be apprehensive? Would there be things that you want to try to put away real quick before Jesus kind of enters into your house? I know that on a normal day there would be things that I would want to put away. I was reminded of that thought while I was reading this one devotional, and the author of this particular devotional said this. He said, "Too many of us want to show up at the doorway looking prim and proper and perfect. We stuff our egos and anxieties in the hall closet so Jesus won't see them when we open the door. But Jesus isn't showing up to see our perfect selves. Instead, we are invited to real, deep, transformative conversation with Jesus. There on the threshold between who we are and who we are becoming, if we are willing to let go of what holds us back." I thought that was a really interesting verse, because this idea that the reason I think Jesus says, "I stand at the door and knock," the reason I think that verse is there is not to frighten us, not to intimidate us, but in order that we might recognize that really when Jesus tries to enter into our lives, the desire is to kind of make things better for us, to make things more as they should be, the way they should look. And so this idea of Jesus standing at the door and knocking and wanting to get everything perfect inside is really counterproductive to the reason Jesus comes into our lives in the first place. And it also says something about the relationship that we have with Jesus, or our understanding of how God is always with us at all times and knows what's being left out and what's not quite as cleaned up as it should be. This is an invitation. I stand at the door and knock. It's an invitation to allow God to come into our lives and to see every aspect, especially those parts of us that need transformation and new life and new beginning. So maybe take a moment, read that verse, Revelations 3:20, and imagine to yourself Jesus coming into your life, not to condemn, not to make fun of, not to ridicule you for something that's there, but in order to truly transform who you are and what God is calling you to be.